Just a quick backstory. I'm gonna share a story with you guys from a little while back, but we've been married for 11 years. Yeah, a long time. We've got 2 kids, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and we took our 2 kids on a trip to the Detroit Zoo. Okay, and as many of you know, if you've seen our daughter, she's very stubborn and very independent. Sassy, I hear it in the crowd, yeah. So we're at the Detroit Zoo, we're walking around, and we get towards the back of the zoo, and it's a bunch of different species of monkeys back there, and she's walking, we're pushing her in the stroller, and she's like, hey, I want to get up and I want to walk with the adults, being her independent self. So she does that, and we let her out of the stroller, and Nicole's pushing Carter, and so she takes off. And I'm like, hey, where is Layla? And she's like, oh, I thought you had her. And I'm like, no, you had her. Just, you know how we get. And so everybody starts to panic. I'm with my family, and my dad and I take off, and we go back towards where we just came from, and that's where we find Layla. Okay? And she is standing there looking at the monkeys we were just looking at before. So I say to her, Layla, why did you do that? Because I'm panicked and scared to death that I just lost my daughter, or somebody might have taken her. And she gives me an answer of, I didn't like those monkeys. Okay, such a simple answer, yet such a bad reason to leave the safety of her father and her mother. But she's a child and very naive, and this is kind of how it looks or works with God. Okay, He is our Heavenly Father who watches over us and He protects us. But just like Layla did, we too choose to sometimes turn away and wander away from where God's calling us. Sometimes we get bored with the situation that we're in or the circumstances that we're facing, so we'll go do things on our own.
Yeah, so we have heard students say things like, why does God leave us sometimes? Or how does He expect me to be good when He's not here? Well, you see, the truth is that God never leaves us. The Bible says this so many different times. But the hard truth is that sometimes we make that decision to wander away from Him. We make that choice to kind of take a path that seems more fun, more interesting. And we see this kind of many times in the Bible. We see stories where people feel or get themselves into places, or maybe even God sometimes takes them into places where they feel lost, forgotten, and honestly kind of abandoned by God.
Let's take a look at Jonah. Okay, God told him to go into a dangerous place where the people were very wicked, and he became scared. Decided he didn't want to go and wanted to do his own thing, so he jumps on a boat to escape God. And many of you know that he was tossed overboard and swallowed by a whale.
Yep. So then we have Joseph. Let's look at Joseph. Joseph has these dreams and these visions that God gives him, and he decides to share them with his brothers and tell them about how they're going to bow to him someday and all these things. And his brothers become so jealous of not only the dreams that he has and what he says that they're going to do, but also the relationship that Joseph has with his brothers. So what happens to Joseph? They decide one day that they are going to kill him. So then they kind of feel a little bit of pity, like, oh, then we have his blood on our hands. Let's not do that. We're just going to throw him into a big pit. And as they do that, some people come up and they're walking by, and there are people that do that trade. And so they trade their brother to these people for 20 silver pieces. Wow.
And then David was anointed to be the next king of Israel as a little boy and did not become the king until the age of 30. He went back to his normal life as a shepherd boy, and after that spent time serving and running from King Saul because King Saul wanted him killed.
Or how about we look at Jesus? When we think of Jesus, we always think of his perfect life, okay? But what we don't really think about is that he didn't live, his life wasn't perfect, but he lived life perfectly. Jesus had kind of a tough life. Everywhere he went, people followed. Everywhere he went, people doubted, people questioned. They wanted to see more. They wanted to know how he did it. They wanted to question, what he believed compared to what they had been taught. Not only that, but Jesus had a really close group of people that he loved and that followed him, right? His disciples. And they too, some of them, chose to turn on Jesus. Judas betrays Jesus for money. And then we have Peter, who even after being warned by Jesus that he would deny him, and Peter declares his loyalty, I will never betray you. When the time comes, betrays knowing Jesus, following Jesus, walking with Jesus, ever having a relationship with Jesus. And then Jesus lays, there and is arrested, and he's beaten, and he's bloody, and at this point you can't even recognize him anymore. And as he lays on the cross in his final moments, in Matthew 27:46, it says, at about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice. I'm going to try to say this right, but he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? You see, even Jesus in that moment felt that same way, that same feeling of being left, being lost, forgotten, and abandoned. So what is going on? Why does God leave us feeling this way sometimes? And so I had a video that was shared with me a few years back that is amazing, and it's just a beautiful picture of what is really going on in this moment. So Norm and I are going to step out for a sec. We're going to have you guys watch a quick short video.
Everybody has a hero.
Okay. Come on.
Mine's my dad.
Yes, I can.
Since Mom died, it's only been us. He has a way of filling my life with color.
Dad! Which one?
That one.
Sometimes I don't understand his advice, but I trust him. And what always brought us together was our love for running. One day, I'll be faster than him. And when I am, I'm gonna win every marathon in the world.
Abby? What's wrong, champ?
Or at least that was my plan. I'm losing my sight.
And real quick, read to me the lowest level that you can see on there. What is called is interocular melanoma.
Eye cancer.
Unfortunately, you will lose your vision.
That was the day my father disappeared.
Okay. Come on.
Dad!
Wakey, wakey. Ready to run, champ? Come on.
I thought he would always be there for me. I guess I was wrong. Dad, where are you? Dad! You abandoned me. Where are you, Dad? Where did you go? Do you not love me anymore? Am I still beautiful? Are you no longer proud of me? How could you leave me when I need you the most?
Dad? Dad, why did you leave me?
Abby thinks I've left her. And as much as it pains me to hear that, she's right. I've left her.
The best that we can do
Give me
is save
something,
the
please.
actual eyes so that cosmetically she doesn't lose them.
That's my girl.
I understand.
That's my girl. That's my little girl.
There's support groups, and I know this is a very difficult time.
I've left her to realize she's more courageous than she ever imagined. I've left her to discover how beautiful she is from the inside out. I've left her to challenge herself in ways she never considered. I've left her to discover how strong she really is. Abby, it's me.
Dad,
It's me, baby.
why did you leave me?
I was right here. I was always here.
Where did you go?
I was always here, baby. Listen, no one believes in you more than I do. You know that. Think about how far you've come. Don't you, baby?
My dad says he gave me what I needed, not what I wanted.
You ready?
Folks, what we're seeing here is amazing. This is a testament of true love.
Love
between
is
a
allowing
mother
someone to see their true worth and beauty. I used to think my dreams were over. I thought I'd never run again. And even though I can't see my dad, I know he's guiding me the entire way.
So, when thinking about talking about this message, I just thought this was such a beautiful picture of our Father, of what God is doing. As you see in the video, he follows his daughter around cleaning up the brokenness and some of the mess that we create. When we go through these moments of feeling forgotten and abandoned, we need to remember that God does not leave us, that what he's doing is he's allowing us to find purpose. He's allowing us to find our identity and our strength. Okay, when we go through hard things, he promises that he'll be there with us. And sometimes that means not feeling him, but trusting that we have a Father who is good and who works all things out for those who love him. And we see this in the Bible. Okay, just like Jonah needed to go and be redirected so that he could go to Nineveh and save the lives of these people. These people that never would have heard the word, who were living a life of destruction. And he saved these people that never would have been reached without him. So in those moments being lost in the belly of a whale, he found his strength to follow the call that God placed on his life that he was afraid of the first time. And let's take a look then at Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery and lived kind of a rough life, but everywhere he went, God's favor was on him, whether that was in the house of his servant or in prison where he was locked up. And later he saved the lives of the Egyptians because he had dreams and visions and knew that a famine was coming, and he prepared for this famine with the help of the people. And not only did he save the people of Egypt, but also the people around him. His very own brothers that sold him into slavery came and were okay and had food. And let's look at David. David, as a boy, was anointed king and then went back to the same life he lived before. And some of us would have been a little bit ashamed of that, and a little bit embarrassed, a little bit frustrated because we were going to be king and we had this calling and an anointing on our lives. But it didn't happen right now for us. But David went back and did what he did. Why? Because God gave him gifts and talents that he needed to slay Goliath. He went in and he wrote Psalms. as he ran for his life. And in those Psalms, it teaches us that it's okay sometimes to get frustrated, but to remember to then rejoice and give God thanks. And then we look at the life of Jesus. We look at the fact, you guys, can you imagine as a parent, for me, to think and imagine of looking at my child full of sin, sickness, sorrow, pain, suffering. And in those moments, it says that God kind of had to almost look away. Like it was unbearable to look at your child that way. Do you not think he looks at you with that same vision, that same pain, that same hardship of looking at you with that sin, suffering, and sorrow? That's hard for a parent to see their kids suffer. But Jesus paved a way. God knew that the suffering that Jesus was going through, the pain, the feeling of abandonment, was so that he could go and he could set captives free. He could fight a battle in the ground so you and I could have him live in us and dwell with us so that we don't ever have to fight a battle alone again, that we don't have to feel abandoned or forgotten, that we can come into his presence and feel this. Now, I want Norm to read you guys a couple verses because I want to prove to you that so many times in the Bible, and this is just a few of the ones I looked up. I think I had 35 written down, and I could have kept going. But these are just verses that say that God will never leave us.
So the first one comes from Deuteronomy 31:6. It says, "So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic before them. For the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you." Okay, and Deuteronomy 31:8 says, "He will be with you. He will never fail you nor abandon you." Okay, and then Hebrews 13:5 says, "For God had said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you." Okay, and the list, like she said, it just continues to go on. So they're up there on the screen if you guys want to read them.
There are so many of you in this room today, and there's many of you that we have had conversations with that have made it very clear that there are so many times in your life that you have felt abandoned. Some of you have had fathers or mothers walk out, or maybe just an unstable and just an unhealthy environment. And you feel so shooken, and you feel like, why, if God is so good, would he place me in this situation? Some of you have caused yourself pain. Some of you have made choices of walking into places that you know you should not go. Just like Layla, walking away from us at the zoo, she was safe in my arms, but she had no idea the danger that she could have faced walking away. Some of you today in this room make those choices to walk away. Maybe it's in relationships, and you're doing things that you know you should not do. Maybe it's testing out with drugs and alcohol, and it's just fun, and it numbs that pain that you have. But only temporary, you guys. That pain will always come back. That feeling of emptiness will always come back. Nothing is going to fill that void for you other than God. And you see, when he sent Jesus, I can only imagine that was the hardest choice that he ever would have to make. And when Jesus cries out to him, I can't imagine, as a parent, he wanted to send all of heaven down to save his child. But he knew that the sacrifice that they were making was for you, was for freedom for you. And at the conference we were just at, I heard a beautiful example. And I know we always tell you guys about coming to the altar. And so Old Testament talks about an altar, right? And an altar, when you come to the altar, they would make a sacrifice. They would bring their purest lamb or whatever they had. They would bring it forth, and then they would slaughter it, right? And then the blood would shed, and it would say that it would pure their sins. You guys, Jesus was that for us. Okay, so when we say now come to the altar, that price, that sacrifice has already been made and already been paid for you. So when you come here, it's not because you think you're better than the people behind you. Okay? And it's not because you're so sinful that you should be here. What it is this is a place where you can come and you can say, Lord, I have stress and anxiety. I feel abandoned, forgotten. I have walked away from you. I have fallen short from you. And you come to this place right here, and with your hands lifted, you are giving it to him, and you are saying, I alone cannot do this. I feel empty and I feel abandoned by you, but I know that you're not a God who would ever leave. So I'm going to bring it right here to this place, and I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to let you do what you do best. And we're going to give it to God in those moments. And it doesn't have to be just an altar call that you come. Whenever we worship, you can bring your worries and your sorrows and your cares right here to him. And yes, you can do it in your seat, you guys. He will meet you wherever you are. But there's just something so special about what an altar is and what it represents, and the blood that was shed so that you can lay it all down right here for him.